The clipboard girl's smile was bright and plastic, the kind you peel off when no one's looking. "One moment," she chirped, heels ticking down the church hallway. I stood there in my purple dress, palms damp, hearing the music warm up in the reception hall. The soft thrum of a bass, the clink of glassware, laughter I wasn't inside of. I had practiced saying it kindly. "I'm Betty Williams, mother of the groom." The words felt sturdy, like a handrail on a steep stair. Samantha came toward me in a spill of white and gold, curls lacquered into obedience. That sweet voice poured like syrup over a knife. "Mix up," she sang. "Last-minute changes." Her eyes didn't smile. "Come, let me show you your special place." For a second, relief. Maybe she was trying. We passed the family tables, names printed in looping script, chairs dressed in ribbons. We kept going, past the flowers, past the light, turning down a side corridor where the air smelled like mop water and old coats. Her heels cracked the quiet. "Almost there," she said, and I heard what she was really saying. "Watch me." She stopped by the coat closet. One metal folding chair leaned against the wall. Beside it, a silver trash can with a swinging lid, the kind that sighs when it closes. "Perfect, isn't it?" she said, delight fizzing at the edges. "Right next to where you belong." Heat climbed my neck. My name, mother of the groom, shrunk to a pinhead. "This isn't necessary," I managed. "On his day, can we just pretend?" Her smile hardened. "You're always so serious, Betty." Tommy rounded the corner, handsome in black, and the ground tilted with hope. "Mom," he said, grinning, "did she show you? Pretty funny, right?" The world narrowed to the hollow ring of that lid as it swung and settled. Guests drifted by behind them, eyes skipping off me like stones on a pond. My son's arm curled around his bride's waist. My boy I raised alone. The one I packed lunches for and taught to tie his shoes while his daddy emptied our account and disappeared. I set my purse down and sat. The chair bit through the thin fabric of my dress. A sour, leftover smell leaked from the can, and every burst of laughter from the hall landed like a thrown pebble, dull and mean. I fixed my face the way you do at the dentist, open enough to survive it, closed enough not to scream. 3 hours is a long time to study the inside of humiliation. It's also long enough to remember things you've been told to forget. A baby born early with the weight of a full-term child. Eyes the color of river glass when both parents are not. A phone voice cracking with anger behind a slammed door. By the time the music swelled for the first dance, a small, steady thing had started inside me. Not tears this time, but something with a spine. If the people who love you seat you by the garbage, what, exactly, are they throwing away? And if you were me, sitting there breathing through the smell, what would you do next? The folding chair left a faint crease across the back of my legs, the kind of mark that lingers even after you stand. For days, I carried that imprint with me, as if humiliation could stain skin. I told myself I wouldn't replay the wedding, but it lived inside every moment afterward. The smell of trash, the laughter of strangers, the look on my son's face when he decided I was the joke. I tried to fold myself back into ordinary life. Morning shifts at the grocery store, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the rhythm of scanning cans and cereal boxes. Customers smiled, some asked about Tommy, and I smiled back like my world hadn't tilted. At night, I cooked small meals for one, sat at my kitchen table with the radio murmuring, and tried to convince myself that solitude was peace. But the garbage can kept rolling back into my mind, and with it, Samantha's voice, sweet as icing until she dropped the mask. Pretend that you belong here. Pretend anyone actually wants you here. I thought back to the first time I met her. My birthday. I had hoped for a quiet dinner, just my boy and me. He showed up with this dazzling young woman in a dress too fine for my little kitchen, red hair curling down her shoulders. "Tommy's told me so much about you," she said, her smile bright but brittle. I had cooked meatloaf, his favorite, but she wrinkled her nose at it, suggesting sushi instead. That night, I knew she was taking the lead, deciding where conversation sat, what food was worthy. My son looked at her like she had lit the whole room. I swallowed my disappointment, cut myself smaller on the inside, told myself to be welcoming. After all, love changes things. Within 6 weeks, they were engaged. I remember standing in the store break room, looking at my phone when he called. "Mom, I proposed. She said yes." My coworkers clapped. Someone hugged me. I forced joy into my voice, but it felt too fast, like a car picking up speed without brakes. I thought, he's young, he's happy. Don't be the bitter mother who holds him back. So I congratulated him, even offered to help with planning, though every offer was brushed aside. "Samantha has it covered," he said. Always Samantha, her world expanding, mine shrinking. Then came the announcement of the baby. 3 months in, her hand already resting on her stomach as if claiming a prize. "A little early, but we're thrilled," Tommy said. They told everyone the due date, then told me later that the baby had come premature. But the boy weighed 8 pounds, solid and strong. Nurses cooed about his features. Samantha snapped at me when I asked about the math. "Some babies just grow faster. Maybe if you'd had more children, you'd know." That one cut deep, slicing into the old wound of a life where I had wanted more, but been left alone with only one child to raise. She found the cracks and pressed her fingers in. Small slights grew like mold. A cold shoulder at dinner parties. Comments about my job at the grocery store, said with a sugar-sweet tone that made the insult seem accidental. "It must be nice not having a career to worry about." Tommy never noticed the sting. When I brought Jake a knitted blanket, she folded it neatly back into the bag, saying, "He already has so many. We wouldn't want him spoiled." My grandson never even touched the yarn I had worked on late into the night. The distance widened. My calls went unanswered, or picked up by Tommy with Samantha's voice echoing in the background. "Tell her we're busy." I began seeing Jake less and less, as if access to him was a currency she controlled. Every interaction was staged, supervised, timed, and always the eyes of that child, green, sharp, watchful, cut through me. They didn't match. Not Tommy's warm brown, not Samantha's light blue. It was like staring into a stranger's gaze trapped in a baby's face. One afternoon, I dropped by unannounced with some mail that had landed at my house by mistake. Samantha answered, her face flushed. Behind her, I heard the tail end of a heated phone call. "You need to stay away. I've told you, it's over." She snapped the door shut quickly, claiming it was a telemarketer. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. My stomach tightened with suspicion, but I told myself not to invent stories. I went home, cooked dinner, tried to forget the anger in her voice. But it stuck, like a shard of glass you can't see but keep feeling in your skin. Then came the wedding. My exclusion from the guest list. My seat by the garbage. My son's laughter ringing in my ears as if years of sacrifice could be erased with a shrug. For 3 hours, I sat there in that folding chair, and memories unraveled like a film reel. The speed of their engagement, the timing of Jake's birth, the phone call behind the door, the nurse's strange comment at the hospital about a newborn with strong features. It all came together like a cruel puzzle. I had spent months pushing doubts aside to protect my son's happiness. But humiliation has a way of clearing fog. Sitting beside that trash can, smelling rot and hearing laughter, I felt a quiet, growing certainty that this wasn't just cruelty. It was cover for something deeper, something rotten at the core of their marriage. Samantha had wanted me small, silent, discarded. But she had underestimated me. She thought pain would paralyze. Instead, it sharpened me. By the time the band played the last song and guests drifted out into the night, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to be the mother who swallowed lies just to stay close. I wasn't going to sit in silence and pretend a baby's eyes weren't telling me the truth. If Samantha wanted to treat me like garbage, then maybe it was time to start digging through what she was trying to throw away. I left the church, not with tears, but with a plan forming. I would find out the truth about the baby, about the timeline, about the woman my son had married. Not out of vengeance, though I'd be lying if I said the thought of wiping the smug grin from her face didn't bring me some comfort. But because my son deserved to know if his life, his love, his family were being built on lies. And if I was wrong, then at least I would finally be free of the gnawing suspicion that had haunted me since the day Samantha first smiled that brittle smile across my birthday table. The morning after the wedding, my kitchen felt smaller than ever. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence while I sat at the table with cold coffee, my purple dress still hanging over a chair like evidence from a crime scene. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silver trash can and heard Samantha's laugh. Worse, I saw Tommy's grin, the way he had joined her in making me the punchline. I pressed my palms flat on the table. Enough. I wasn't going to live with questions chewing me alive. My boy deserved to know if the child he called his son carried another man's blood. And I deserved to stop doubting myself. I flipped through the phone book, something I hadn't done in years, running my finger down the listings for investigators. The first number led to a brusque man who said he only handled insurance fraud. The second hung up when I mentioned my daughter-in-law. My hands were trembling when I tried the third. David Martinez. His voice was steady, kind. "Family matters are delicate," he said. "But if there's doubt about a child's parentage, that's not something you should ignore. Can you meet me tomorrow?" His office was sandwiched between a hair salon and a sandwich shop. Nothing glamorous, but inside was neat, tidy. David was in his 40s, tall, with gray at his temples. He had the calm eyes of someone who had seen worse than family secrets. I told him everything. Samantha's sudden appearance in our lives, the rushed engagement, Jake's birth, the green eyes that matched no one. He listened without interruption, his pen scratching in slow, deliberate strokes. When I finished, my throat dry, he leaned back. "The timeline is questionable. 8 months from meeting to birth, full-term wait. It doesn't add up." Hearing someone else say it was both terrifying and relieving. "But babies can come early and still be healthy," I said quickly, defending the very woman I despised. He nodded. "Possible, but unlikely at that weight. And the features you describe, sometimes they do point to another father. I can help, but you need to understand. If we confirm this, it could end your son's marriage. It could end your relationship with him." I thought of Tommy's laughter in the church hallway, the way he had dismissed me like a nuisance. "That relationship is already broken," I whispered. "At least this way, the truth comes out." David explained what we'd need. DNA from the baby, DNA from Tommy. The first would be easier. A pacifier, a spoon. The second would be harder, since Tommy didn't know what I was doing. I left with his card burning a hole in my purse, the word truth echoing in my head like a church bell. For a week, I moved through life in a daze. Work, chores, sleep that never lasted long. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's eyes instead, green and sharp, staring at me from a baby's face. Then the phone rang. David's voice. "Come in tomorrow. I've found something." I barely slept. At his office, he laid a folder thick with notes on the desk. "She wasn't honest about her past," he said. Samantha had told Tommy she lived in Denver, working as a receptionist. That much was true. But there had been a man. David slid over a photograph, a backyard barbecue, Samantha wrapped around a tall man with dark hair and the exact green eyes Jake carried. The air left my lungs. "His name is Marcus Thompson," David said. "They were together almost 3 years. Lived together for the last one. She left Denver 2 months before meeting your son. Friends said the relationship was serious. He says she was pregnant when she left." I clutched the photo. Marcus's jawline, his eyes, even the crooked smile. It was all there in Jake's tiny face. "She disappeared," David continued. "No forwarding address. He's been looking for her since." The room tilted. My hands shook so hard I had to set the photo down. "So Jake, most likely his," David said gently. I wanted to scream, cry, laugh, anything. Instead, I just sat, stone still. The betrayal wasn't only Samantha's. It was Tommy's blindness, my own silence, the way I had allowed doubt to eat me while she spun her web. "I need a sample," I said finally. My voice was steady now, steel under years of being dismissed. "I need proof." David warned me to be careful. If Samantha suspected, she could vanish again. Take Jake with her. I promised him I'd be cautious. The chance came sooner than I thought. 4 days later, Tommy called. His voice was warm, familiar, like the son I used to know. "Mom, Samantha and I thought it'd be nice to have lunch together. Want to come over? Maybe bring your chocolate chip cookies?" I almost dropped the phone. Samantha inviting me? After the wedding humiliation? Every nerve screamed trap. But it was also an opportunity. I agreed, forcing cheer into my voice. That Saturday, I stood at their apartment door with cookies in hand and nerves rattling my bones. Samantha answered with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Betty, come in. Smells amazing." The apartment gleamed, blue and white decor, cold as a magazine spread. Jake was in his high chair, banging a red plastic spoon. My heart twisted. Up close, the resemblance to Marcus was undeniable. Tommy stood in the doorway, pride glowing in his face. "He likes you, Mom. Look at that smile." I swallowed hard. "Don't lose your nerve now." Lunch was oddly pleasant. Samantha played the gracious hostess, asking about my work, laughing at Tommy's stories. When she fed Jake mashed bananas, he grabbed the spoon and smeared it across his face. She sighed, handed it to me. "Your turn. He'll eat better for you." My chance. I fed him slowly, my hands steady though my heart raced. When he finally pushed the spoon away, I stood, rinsed it quickly at the sink, and in one practiced motion, slipped it into the plastic bag hidden in my purse. Replaced it with a clean one. It was done in less than 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. The rest of the visit passed in a blur. Photos from their honeymoon, plans for Jake's first birthday, polite laughter. Samantha even hugged me at the door, her voice soft. "Thank you for coming. We want Jake to know his grandmother." Her words tasted like poison, but I smiled, hugged her back, and left. The next morning, David and I sat in a small lab across town. A technician labeled the bag with Jake's spoon. "We'll compare this to your son's DNA once we have it. Results in 4 to 6 days." The wait was torture. Each phone call made my stomach drop. Each shift at the grocery store blurred. I replayed every memory of Samantha, every sign I had ignored. I told myself I wanted truth for Tommy, but another part of me, smaller, darker, longed to prove I wasn't crazy, that the cruelty at that wedding had been a mask for deeper lies. Then the call came, David's voice steady. "The results are in. Can you come in?" I drove with my hands shaking, vision tunneling. At his desk, he laid out the envelope, his expression grave. "I want you to know, whatever these say, you did the right thing." I nodded, breath shallow. He opened it. "The test shows no biological relationship between your son and the child." The words slammed into me. Expected, yes, but hearing them aloud was like being struck. My knees gave, and I sank into the chair opposite him. 99.9% certainty. David said quietly. We ran it twice. Relief and devastation collided inside me. I had been right. I had proof. But the proof shattered what little was left of my son's world. What now? I asked, my voice hoarse. That's up to you, David said. Confront Samantha privately, tell Tommy yourself, or reveal it publicly. But once it's out, there's no going back. I thought of that garbage can, that folding chair, the laughter of wedding guests who found me entertaining. I thought of Marcus searching for his child. And I thought of Tommy building his life on a lie that was bound to crumble. I need time, I whispered. But even then, a plan was already forming. Samantha had chosen the stage for my humiliation. Perhaps it was time I chose the stage for her truth. For 3 weeks, I carried the truth like a stone in my chest. The DNA report lay folded in my purse, then locked in my dresser, then tucked under a stack of bills as if moving it around could dull its weight. Every conversation with Tommy became a performance. Every smile I gave Jake hid a secret I was dying to speak. I thought about calling Samantha directly, throwing the results in her face, but David's words echoed. If she suspects, she could disappear again. Take Jake with her. The thought of that child, Marcus's child, vanishing into another lie made my skin crawl. So I stayed quiet, but silence didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like complicity. Then the phone rang one Monday evening. Betty, Samantha's voice sang, light and cheerful. I have a wonderful idea. Why don't you host Jake's first birthday party? Both families together. It'll be perfect. I gripped the receiver so hard my knuckles whitened. Her gall amazed me. After seating me by a garbage can at my own son's wedding, she now wanted me to play Grandmother of the Year, parading her lie in front of her parents and brother. But it was exactly the opening I needed. That sounds lovely, I said, forcing warmth into my tone. Tell me what I can bring. Just yourself, she chirped. And maybe those cookies Tommy loves. My parents can't wait to meet you. I hung up and sat in the stillness of my kitchen. On the table lay the manila envelope with the test results and David's notes, including Marcus's photograph. My plan began to crystallize. Samantha had humiliated me in front of a crowd. I would reveal her truth in front of one, not from spite, though anger burned hot in me, but because this way there would be no twisting, no denial. Witnesses would pin the lie in place. Friday came warm and bright, at odds with the storm inside me. I baked cookies that morning, the familiar rhythm of creaming butter and sugar steadying my hands. As the smell filled my small house, I thought of Tommy as a boy, sneaking raw dough from the bowl, his laughter ringing clear. That memory broke me for a moment, tears dripping into the mixing bowl, but I wiped them away, finished the task, and slid the cookies onto a cooling rack. Love and truth would share the plate today. The apartment buzzed when I arrived. Samantha's parents, Frank and Linda, looked polished and expensive, their cologne and perfume clashing in the air. Her brother Kevin laughed too loudly, holding Jake high in the air while the baby squealed. Tommy beamed as he filmed everything on his phone. Betty, Linda said, offering a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. We've heard so much about you. Family is family, Frank added, shaking my hand with a quick, dismissive squeeze. The irony nearly made me laugh. If only they knew. I played my role for an hour, nodded at Linda's stories of European vacations, listened to Kevin's complaints about his sales job, endured Frank's jokes about golf. All the while, I kept one eye on Jake, toddling from person to person, his green eyes flashing like tiny lanterns of truth. When the cake was brought out, Samantha placed a paper crown on Jake's head, frosting already smeared across his cheeks. Time for happy birthday, she sang, gathering everyone close. I stood, heart pounding. Before we sing, I'd like to say something. The room fell quiet. Tommy glanced up from his phone, puzzled. Samantha froze, a flicker of fear passing across her face before she plastered on a smile. "What is it, Mom?" Tommy asked. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. My hands were steady. My voice, when it came, was stronger than I'd imagined. 3 weeks ago, I had a DNA test done. On Jake. The silence was a living thing. Samantha's face drained of color. Linda gasped. Kevin's jaw dropped. "Why would you—" Tommy began, but I cut him off. "Because I suspected, and the results confirmed it. Jake is not your biological son." Chaos erupted. Linda demanded explanations. Frank muttered angrily. Kevin stared at his sister like she was a stranger. But my eyes never left Samantha. "That's impossible," she snapped, but her voice shook. "The lab ran the test twice, 99.9% certainty, and that's not all." I pulled out the photograph of Marcus Thompson and handed it to Tommy. "This is the man Samantha lived with for 3 years in Denver. She left him 2 months before meeting you. He's been searching for her ever since, believing she was pregnant when she disappeared." Tommy's face crumpled as he stared at the photo, then at Jake, then back again. Recognition hit like lightning. "How long?" he whispered, his voice raw. Samantha's mask cracked. "Since before I met you," she admitted in a small, desperate voice. The room exploded again, voices rising in outrage, disbelief, questions hurled like stones. Jake whimpered in his high chair, sensing the storm. Tommy lifted him, held him close, eyes still fixed on his wife. "You lied," he said quietly. "For over a year, you let me believe." "I did it for you," she insisted, tears streaking her face. "You wanted a family so badly. You said Jake was the best thing that ever happened to you. I couldn't take that away." "No," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the noise. "You did it for yourself. You built a marriage on deception and let everyone else pay the price." Samantha spun on me, rage twisting her features. "You've destroyed everything. Are you happy now?" I met her fury with calm. "No, you destroyed it the moment you lied. I just revealed the truth." The room settled into a heavy silence. Tommy stared at the photograph in his hand, then at the baby clinging to his shoulder. Finally, he turned to me. His eyes were wet, his face pale. "You could have told me privately," he said. "Why like this?" I thought of that folding chair, that garbage can, the laughter of strangers while my son smiled at my humiliation. "Because she's good at twisting things," I answered softly. I wanted witnesses. I wanted the truth to stand on its own. He nodded slowly, as if the weight of it all was finally too much to carry. He walked to the balcony, sliding the door open, stepping into the night air. Behind him, Samantha's family erupted again, angry, confused, betrayed. But I stayed where I was, holding Jake now, his small body trembling against mine. "No one ruined your marriage but you," I said to Samantha, my voice steady, almost quiet. "You chose lies. I chose truth." Her eyes burned into me, full of hate, but she had nothing left to say. The birthday party dissolved into chaos that day. Frank stormed out first, muttering curses under his breath about shame and lawyers. Linda followed, pale and stiff, dragging Kevin by the arm, while Samantha shouted after them. The apartment emptied in a flurry of raised voices and slammed doors until only Samantha, Tommy, Jake, and I were left. The silence afterward was thick as cement. Tommy stood by the balcony, staring out into the dark. Jake whimpered against his shoulder. Samantha sat at the table, her face streaked with mascara, her body trembling with anger. I remained in the kitchen doorway, my hands gripping the counter to steady myself. "Tommy," Samantha whispered, her voice raw. "You can't let her ruin us. She's twisting everything. She's jealous." He turned, his face hollow. "The test doesn't lie, Samantha. You did." She lunged toward him, reaching for his arm, but he stepped back. The rejection seemed to break something inside her. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I only wanted security. You offered me a future I didn't think I could have. My son's voice was low, steady in a way that frightened me. You offered me a lie. The next week blurred into a rush of paperwork, consultations, and painful conversations. Tommy filed for divorce, citing fraud. He moved back into my small house temporarily, his boxes stacked by the hallway, his shoulders bent as if carrying bricks. Every night at the kitchen table, he sifted through documents David had gathered. Marcus's statements, the DNA results, Samantha's lease termination in Denver. The evidence built itself into a wall that no lawyer could climb over. Samantha fought, of course. Her lawyer argued that biology didn't erase a year of fatherhood, that Tommy had bonded with Jake, that tearing them apart was cruel. I watched my son struggle with that truth. Late at night, he'd sit at the table with his head in his hands, whispering, He calls me Dad. How do I stop answering to that? You don't stop loving him, I said gently. But you stop living a lie. It was Marcus who tipped the balance. He flew in from Denver, a man desperate not to lose another year with his son. The first meeting between him and Tommy was tense, two men bound by betrayal and connected by the same child. They shook hands stiffly, neither quite knowing how to stand in the same room. I didn't know she was pregnant when she left, Marcus said quietly. If I had, I would have followed her to the ends of the earth. Tommy nodded, his eyes wet. I believed Jake was mine. I loved him like he was. And you always will, Marcus replied. But he deserves to know where he came from. He deserves both of us, even if it's complicated. In the weeks that followed, the legal process unfolded. Marcus petitioned for custody, his lawyer armed with evidence of paternity and Samantha's deception. Samantha raged in the courtroom, her voice rising, her claims of stability unraveling under scrutiny. She had no steady income, no honest record, only a string of manipulations. I sat behind Tommy in the courtroom pew, the manila envelope heavy in my lap, though everyone had already seen its contents. Each session felt like another layer of skin peeled away, exposing wounds none of us had wanted to show. But when the judge finally ruled, granting primary custody to Marcus, visitation to Tommy, and limiting Samantha's rights, the air shifted. Relief mingled with grief. Outside the courthouse, Samantha cornered me. Her face was gaunt, her eyes burning. You think you've won, she spat. You destroyed my marriage, my family, my life. For what? To feel important again? I met her rage calmly. No, to stop the lies, to give Jake the truth. That's something you never gave him. Her lip curled, but she had no fight left. She turned and walked away, her heels clattering against the courthouse steps like nails in a coffin. The weeks after were quieter but heavy. Tommy visited Jake regularly, adjusting to his new role. Marcus moved into an apartment nearby, determined to be present. At first, Tommy resisted, hovering on the edges of their meetings, his arms crossed. But slowly, as Jake toddled between them, reaching for one man and then the other, the ice began to thaw. One evening, Marcus invited us both for dinner. His apartment smelled of tomato sauce and garlic bread, toys scattered across the living room. Jake giggled as he built towers of blocks, knocking them down with equal delight. Watching him, I felt a strange peace. This child, once the center of lies, was now the bridge between two men who had been deceived but refused to pass that legacy on. Over spaghetti, Marcus looked at Tommy and said, "You'll always be part of his life. That's not negotiable." Tommy's throat worked as he swallowed. "I don't know if I can watch him call someone else Dad." Marcus's eyes softened. "Then don't. Let him call you both what he wants. Love doesn't need titles to be real." Later, walking home with Tommy, he slipped his hands into his pockets. "I don't hate him," he admitted. "I thought I would, but he's as much a victim as I am." I squeezed his arm. "The only one who isn't a victim here is Samantha. She chose every lie." He nodded, his jaw tight. "And she'll live with that. Still, the hardest goodbye came when Jake transitioned to Marcus's care. I stood beside Tommy as he packed a small suitcase. Tiny clothes, stuffed animals, the blanket I had knitted though it had once been rejected. He folded it carefully, tears slipping down his cheeks. "He won't even remember me," Tommy whispered. "Yes, he will," I said firmly, "because you loved him, and love leaves fingerprints even when time tries to erase them." At the handover, Jake clung to Tommy's shirt, his little fists tight. Marcus crouched, speaking softly, patient. Eventually, Jake reached for him, still looking back at Tommy as if asking permission. My son kissed his head and whispered, "Be good, buddy." Then he turned away before his knees gave out. The months that followed were full of rebuilding. Tommy moved into a small apartment near mine, started focusing on work again, began to laugh in ways I hadn't heard since before Samantha. He came over for dinners, helped me fix the leaky faucet, even talked about maybe going back to school. But the scars lingered. Some nights, he admitted he still dreamed of Jake calling him Dad. Other nights, he raged at himself for not seeing through Samantha sooner. All I could do was listen, hold his hand, and remind him. Trusting someone isn't a weakness. Believing in love isn't foolish. It's what makes you human. Samantha, meanwhile, faded from our lives. Rumors said she moved back with her parents, nursing grudges and planning appeals that never came to fruition. Her absence was a relief, though the shadow of her choices would linger for years. For me, the victory wasn't in watching her downfall. It was in watching my son reclaim himself. In hearing him laugh again, seeing him share meals with Marcus without bitterness, knowing Jake would grow up surrounded by truth instead of deception. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to that folding chair by the garbage can. The smell, the shame, the laughter of strangers. It had been the darkest moment of my life. But it had also been the spark that lit the path to truth. And now, standing in my quiet kitchen with the hum of the refrigerator and the smell of cookies cooling on the counter, I finally felt something close to peace. Not triumph, not revenge, just the quiet relief of knowing lies had been broken open and we had survived the shattering. 7 months later, the house was quiet again. No wedding invitations on the fridge, no tension hanging in the air, no late-night tears muffled into my pillow. Just the steady tick of the wall clock and the smell of cookies baking in the oven, because some rituals are worth keeping. Tommy knocked at 6 sharp, like always. When I opened the door, he smiled, carrying a bouquet of supermarket flowers and a tired kind of hope in his eyes. He looked more himself these days, still healing, still tender in places, but lighter than before. Over dinner, he told me about work, about maybe enrolling in night classes, about how Marcus had invited him to join Jake at the park. "It's strange," he admitted, pushing his plate away. "I thought seeing them together would crush me, but instead, it feels right. Jake's happy. Marcus is good to him, and I still get to be there, even if it's different." I reached across the table, touched his hand. "Love doesn't disappear, Tommy. It just changes shape." His eyes softened. "You've been saying that since Dad left. Guess it finally makes sense." Later, when he was gone and the dishes were stacked neatly by the sink, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea. My phone buzzed. A photo from Marcus. Jake at the playground, wobbling forward on his own 2 feet, arms outstretched, green eyes bright with joy. The caption read, "Thought you'd want to see this." I smiled, tears blurring the screen. Jake would never be mine by blood, but in some quiet way, he would always belong to me too. I had fought for the truth, not to win a battle against Samantha, but to give this child a chance at an honest life. And in that photo, I saw proof that honesty could grow something whole out of broken ground. I set the phone aside and leaned back, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock. For the first time in a long while, I felt steady. The truth had cost us dearly, marriage lost, illusions shattered, but it had also freed us. Because dignity matters, because lies rot everything they touch, because family, if it's worth the name, is built on respect, not convenience. So here's what I've learned. Love without truth isn't love at all. It's a shadow. And no matter how painful, it's better to stand in the light. Now I turn to you, listening to my story. Have you ever had to choose between comfort and honesty? Between keeping the peace and telling the truth? What would you do if you were in my place? Share your story with us. I'd like to hear it. And if these journeys of family, betrayal, and courage touch something in you, stay with us at Roots and Secrets. Subscribe, leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from. Because somewhere out there, your voice might be the one that helps another person find the strength to step out of the shadows and into the truths.